Welcome along to this video where we are going to be discussing short lets with David Smith of Anthony Gold Solicitors. And David, actually what determines what a short let is?
It's surprisingly easy.
Yes.
Any let for less than 90 consecutive nights is a short let.
So we're talking holiday lets, serviced accommodation, those type of lets.
Yeah, the purpose of the letting isn't particularly important. It's simply the length of the let. So less than 90 consecutive nights, or 3 months in ordinary parlance, is a short let for the purposes of planning.
Now, you have concerns about things that you're seeing on the forums in regards to people starting up these kind of strategies.
Yes, because short letting's fine everywhere in the country except Greater London. And inside the old borders of Greater London, it is restricted, and it is a planning restriction, and you are not permitted to short let for tenancies less than 90 consecutive nights without planning consent. Now, there was some liberalisation of that under the Deregulation Act, but that liberalisation only applies to people letting their own property that they live in, either on a room or that they live in and pay the council tax for normally. It doesn't apply to people who are in a business of letting properties out on a short basis. So people who are doing that are in breach of planning permission. They risk planning prosecution. If they are prosecuted, then the Proceeds of Crime Act will apply. So all of the rent that they have earned short letting will be recoverable against them. So it can be very expensive. The fine is unlimited, and furthermore, it's usually a breach of mortgage conditions. Most mortgages prevent business use. And if it's a flat, most flat leases prevent business use, and routine short letting, there's plenty of case law on this, is defined as business use. Yeah. So it doesn't even matter if your lease doesn't say no short letting. If it says no use outside planning, you'll be in breach of planning, so you'll be in breach of your lease and your mortgage. If you're doing it as a business, you'll be in breach of the no business provisions of your lease and your mortgage. And increasingly, flat landlords in London will object to short letting because it annoys the hell out of every other occupier of those flats, and they make a fuss about it.
And also I would imagine that there's insurance implications as well, because it's much more going down the lines of a hotel, and you must have public liability issues as well.
Well, essentially the key point is your insurance probably won't cover you. If someone is injured and it transpires that they were living there and you were using the property effectively for a business, the chances are the insurance policy will decline to pay out, and you'll be left facing the entirety of that bill.
So what is your advice to landlords that are thinking of starting up a short lets or serviced accommodation type business? Obviously, you've said it's not really doable within Greater London, but what about outside London? There's a lot to be compliant about, isn't there?
Well, as with almost anything, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Yeah. You can make a lot of money doing it, but there are risks. If you want to do it outside London, if you're talking about flats, you'll need the permission of the flat leaseholder. Flat freeholder, which you probably won't get, but you can go and ask. You'll need to think about your insurance. If you're inside Greater London, you'll need planning permission. You're very unlikely to get it unless your property was purpose constructed for short letting and converted from some other use, so it's not taking away from current stock.
And what about right to rent checks? They apply as well, don't they?
If it was for a holiday let, so it wasn't the person's home, then they wouldn't. But any sort of short letting where you're letting to someone where they're planning to live there full time, it would. So it would kind of depend on the situation and what the purpose of the accommodation was. I mean, given that it's short, less than 90 nights, more often than not, it probably won't be their home. But the Home Office takes a different view of short letting, and they say anything over a month makes them suspicious, so I would be very cautious about it.
So would you recommend that landlords take the correct identity documents anyway, just so they're covered?
Well, knowing who's living in your property is a good idea at all times, right. And given that you might want to take a copy of a passport, then taking that copy face-to-face with a person there so you can say you've satisfied the right to rent check later certainly isn't going to do you any harm.